Hello everyone, it's Jananie and welcome back to my channel, This Story Ain't Over. Today I want to talk about the upcoming books that I am extremely excited for, ones that are coming out for the rest of 2024. This is by no means an exhaustive list and there's probably a bunch of books that I am missing and that I have forgotten to include. So if you think there's a book that's coming out in the second half of 2024 that you think I might enjoy, leave it in the comments so that I can go pick it up. This is going to be a fairly straightforward video. I'm going to tell you the date that these books come out, what they're about, and why I'm excited to read them. And before we get into it, I want to address the elephant in the room. Yes, I know my bookshelves are disorganized and out of order and messy. I just moved, so I still need to reorganize them. Stay tuned for that video potentially soon. Okay, starting with August 6th, I know this video is probably going to go up that same day or a day after, so I'm a little late to this, but there are so many great books that are coming out August 6th that I want to talk about, and two of them were actually available with Book of the Month for this month for August. Book of the Month is kindly sponsoring this video, and they are a service that I absolutely adore, and I was able to get two new releases prior to their release on August 6th. From Book of the Month. So first up I have 5-Star Stranger by Kat Tang. This one is a bit of a contemporary fiction and it follows this man who is top rated on this app called Rental Stranger. Essentially through this app people can rent him to attend different events, whether it be like a wedding or a baby shower or whatever else, or stand in as their fake fiance or wingman or friend. This actually reminds me a lot of Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. The main character in that book is also on a similar app, but as I said, this one is a bit of a contemporary fiction, so it's less about the romance and more about the relationship that he has with this young girl who he is pretending to be the father of. The other book that I got from Book of the Month is one that I'm so freaking excited for. I was so hyped when I got it early before the release because I love this author, and that is The Seventh Veil of Salome by Sofia Moreno Garcia. I've read almost all of her books and I have loved them deeply except for the newest release, but this one seems like it's going to be more in the vein of Mexican Gothic. This book is set in 1950s Hollywood and essentially there's this big role of the character of Salome that everyone wants to play. And our main character Vera gets the role, but she's faced with the envy of this other actress named Nancy. And from there it seems like it's going to be a huge rivalry between them as they try to make it to the top in the golden age of Hollywood. I'm super excited to read both of these books, so if you're interested in either of them, go check out Book of the Month and grab your first book for only $9.99 with the code FIREFLY. That's an incredible price for a new release hardcover book, so highly recommend checking it out. And Book of the Month also has some other really great perks. They also have audiobooks, so if you don't want to use your credit on a physical book, you can use it towards an audiobook. And you can also use their app to review the books that you're loving and track your progress towards some really great rewards. And as I've said so many times before, I absolutely love Book of the Month, and I really also love their skip policy, so if you ever don't like the selections for that month, you can just skip it for free and continue your subscription later on. So all around a really great deal, so go check out the link down below and grab your first box for only $9.99 with the code FIREFLY. Alrighty, on to the other books that release on August 6th. First up, I have This Ravenous Fate by Haley Dennings. Some of you may recognize the author's name because she is actually a booktuber. She's been on BookTube for years. I love Haley and she's a wonderful person and I'm so excited that her debut novel is out now. But beyond Haley being an amazing person, her book actually sounds so freaking good. This Ravenous Fate is the first book in a fantasy duology that is set in Jazz Age Harlem. It's 1926 in the book and we are following two different main characters, and in this world we have vampires, but they're not actually called by that name. They're called Reapers, and they are viewed as having this like very horrible affliction. So they used to be humans and then they contracted this illness of some kind that's turned them into a reaper or vampire. So the first of our two main characters is Elise Saint, and she comes from the family of the Saints who have this very thriving reaper hunting business, and she is now the heir to the empire and she knows that most of the reapers want her dead. And then we have Layla Quinn, who actually knows Elise from when they were younger, and she was only turned into a reaper 5 years ago and her life has completely changed. She's lost family, she's lost protection, she's been subject to these cruel experiments in this new world, and she's also been betrayed by Elise. Layla is framed for some brutal killings, so the Saint family offers her a deal where she just has to investigate the murders with Elise's help. There's also talk in the town that some of the Reapers are turning back into humans and that there's allegedly a cure running around the city, so these two characters are also trying to figure that out. And obviously, if it wasn't clear, this book has queer representation, it is a lesbian romance, and I'm just so freaking hyped for this dynamic and just the way that the story might play out. It's giving me semi like These Violent Delights vibes, but also like Buffy the Vampire vibes, and I'm just really excited. All right, next up on August 6th as well, we have Lady Macbeth by Ava Reid. I've read one Ava Reid book before, and that's A Study in Drowning. I quite liked it, but it was a YA, so it wasn't like my favorite thing, but it was still a nice read. But from what I can tell, this is an adult novel, and it is a retelling of the Shakespeare play Macbeth. If you're unfamiliar with Macbeth as a play, it involves a lot of murders and lines of succession and witches with creepy prophecies and absolute mayhem. And so what I'm really excited about for this book is that it is a retelling, but from the perspective of Lady Macbeth, who is Macbeth's wife and who happens to be a bit of a murderous gal. She's very ambitious and she sort of pushes Macbeth to do a lot of the horrible things that he does, but she's also afflicted with some serious guilt throughout the play. So I'm curious to see how Ava Reid is going to portray that in this retelling and whether she's going to take some more liberties with the story. All right, next, also on August 6th, we have Hum by Helen Phillips. This one is a sci-fi, a bit of a dystopia, and also a bit of a horror novel. It takes place in a distant future in a city that has been ruined by climate change, and it's also populated by these intelligent robots called Hums. From there, we follow our main character, May, who is a mother and a wife, and when she loses her job to artificial intelligence, she becomes fairly desperate because she has all of these family debts to resolve. And so she decides to become a guinea pig in this experiment that will alter her face so that she can't be recognized by surveillance. This book is definitely giving me similar vibes to Lakewood by Megan Giddings. I haven't read the book yet, but just based off the synopsis, it seems pretty similar. But I'm really excited about this one because it tackles the topic of climate change, and it also follows a mom character, which I feel like is something we don't get often in sci-fi fantasy as like the main character. So really hyped for this one coming out August 6th. Okay, and then the last book that I have coming out on August 6th is The Truth According to Ember by Danica Nava. This one is a contemporary romance, and it follows our main character Ember, who is a Chickasaw woman. She is Native American, and she has been having a very tough time with the job market and hunting for a job. And so when her resume is rejected for the 37th time, she decides to get creative with her qualifications. And this is where Native American Ember becomes White Ember and lands her dream accounting job. And so from there, she thrives in her corporate life, but she starts to fall for one of her coworkers who is also Native American, but all of her lies are starting to circle around her and she's got to deal with them. Okay, coming out on August 20th, I have By Any Other Name by Jodi Picoult. I know this author is really big, but I've actually never read one of her books, but this one really caught my eye because of the subject matter, because it follows two women across different centuries, and one of them happens to be the real author of the Shakespearean plays. So in one timeline in 1581, we follow Amelia, who is the mistress of this lord, and as a young woman during this period, she doesn't have a voice of her own, but she does spend a lot of her time watching plays and starts to think of her own. And in order to get her works out there, she ends up paying a man to use his name, and that's where, you know, it becomes Shakespeare's play. Now in the other timeline, which is in our present day, we follow Melina, who is the descendant of Amelia in 1581. And Melina is a playwright as well, and she starts a new work about her ancestor Amelia and starts to see the similarities between their situations, even though they are 400 years apart. I'm really excited for this one just because I love anything that's related to like Shakespeare, but I'm also intrigued by the concept of it and this idea of like women allowing themselves to be erased from history in order to just see their work out there. All right, next, also coming out on August 20th, we have The Volcano Daughters, and this is by Gina Maria Balibrera. This one honestly seems like it's going to be our heartbreaker. It's a historical fiction, but also has a little bit of magical realism to it. And essentially it follows two sisters in the many years of their lives from when they were raised in the shadow of El Salvador's dictator and their flight from genocide, which takes them to Hollywood and Paris and other locations. And throughout this journey, they are followed by a chorus of furies and the ghosts of their murdered friends. All right, next up, also on August 20th, this one is by an author that I've read from before, and that is You Will Never Be Me by Jessie Q. Sutanto. I'm super excited for this one because it's a thriller and it deals with like influencer culture. Essentially, we follow these two mom influencers, Meredith and Aspen. And when they first started out, Meredith actually taught Aspen most of what she knew. But at some point, Aspen starts to eclipse Meredith's popularity and becomes very successful. And this is where it gets interesting because Meredith starts to resent Aspen in a lot of ways and thinks that she is entitled to Aspen's life because of the way she helped her initially. And so she starts to stalk Aspen and at some point steals an iPad from her home and starts messing with her schedule and going to meet potential sponsors and just basically ruining Aspen's life. The book also seems to have perspective chapters from Aspen as well, so we're seeing that side of the story, and I'm just really curious to see how this one will like end or like blow up by the end. So very hyped for this one for sure. All right, jumping to September 3rd, which feels like a million years away, but it's only a month away, less than a month away. We have Blue Sisters by Coco Malores. This book was actually published earlier this year in May in the UK, but it's unfortunately only getting published in North America in September. So I am waiting with bated breath because I really, really loved this author's other book, Cleopatra and Frankenstein. And although this one seems quite different, I'm still really hyped because I just really loved her writing. I honestly don't want to know too much about the book before going into it because I just want to experience it firsthand. But overall, what I know of the premise is that it follows these three sisters who are estranged and they're forced to go back to their family home in New York after their fourth sister dies. As someone who is the youngest of three sisters, I am definitely intrigued by this concept and I'm really curious to see how it's going to play out. It also seems like each of the sisters is very, very different. So I'm really curious to see how those relationships will unfold. Okay, next on September 24th, we have Intermezzo by Sally Rooney. Those of you who have seen my Is Sally Rooney Even Worth the Hype video may be surprised that I have this book here because personally, I don't really like most of her books. The only one that I did enjoy was Conversations with Friends, which I actually really, really liked. But given that I did enjoy Conversations with Friends, I feel like I should give Sally Rooney another chance because she may impress me again. So Intermezzo seems to follow these two brothers who are very, very different from each other, and they're both grieving some sort of loss, and they're both dealing with very complicated interpersonal relationships and are overall trying to figure out their lives. The older brother is in his 30s, and then the younger brother is in his early 20s, so there's also that dynamic to play with. So overall, I'm intrigued by this one. I don't think I'm gonna necessarily love it, but I am really curious about how it will play out. Okay, and then the last four books that I have for this video are actually all coming out on October 15th, and that is particularly because they are all from the same publisher, and that is Bindery Books. So for those of you who are unfamiliar, Bindery is this new startup that partners with influencers to create these sort of micro imprints and publish books that have been generally overlooked by the traditional publishing industry. And of course, I am also one of the people on Bindery, so it's essentially like Patreon plus publishing. So I have this Bindery community full of people who have paid the price of a coffee to get exclusive content from me, but half of the fee that they pay actually goes towards the publishing imprint that I now have, which is called Boundless Press. And through it, we are actually publishing our first book next year in summer of 2025, which is called Dust Settles North. So definitely keep that on your radar. It is a literary fiction that deals with grief and two characters who are going through that in very different ways. They are both Egyptian American, so they are dealing with that dual identity. And overall, it's a really beautiful book that I think so many of you are gonna love. Now back to the four books that are coming out on October 15th. These are each from a different influencer's micro imprint, and they've essentially been curated for the audiences that they have, you know, the type of books that their audiences are gonna love. So out of these four books, I definitely think you'll find something that you're gonna love. So let's get into each of these. So first up, we have Strange Beasts by Susan J. Morris. This one seems really interesting because it's kind of a meld between Dracula and Sherlock Holmes. It's a bit of a gothic fantasy, and it's also got a queer romance, a lesbian romance, which I think is going to be so much fun. And beyond the fact that it's a historical fantasy and also a puzzle box mystery, it also really explores the idea of feminine power. This one just seems like so much fun and so many elements that I love, so can't wait to pick it up. And if you're interested in it, definitely go pre-order it now. That helps with Bindery and, you know, just making sure that we can continue publishing these books. And beyond that, if you are interested in the behind the scenes of the publishing process for this book, I would highly go check out the Bindery for the imprint that is publishing this book. I'll leave them all linked down below. Okay, the next one that I have is Inferno's Heir by Tiffany Wang, and this one is a YA fantasy, and it seems like it's going to be so much fun. The book follows our main character, who is an outcast princess, and she essentially joins the rebellion against her own family's kingdom because she knows that she won't survive in her own kingdom against her half-brother, who has now just been crowned king. I believe this book involves some elemental magic as well, and it seems like the main character can control two of the elements, which seems pretty interesting. Really curious to see how this one plays out, and I feel like it's a concept that I have never heard of, like the idea of joining a rebellion against your own kingdom. So really excited to see how that will play out. All right, the next one is House of Frank by Kay Sinclair, and this one seems like it's going to be such a fun one. It is a cozy fantasy, and I'm going to read you a line from the description. It says, "A warm and hopeful story of a lonely witch consumed by grief who discovers a whimsical cast of characters in a magical arboretum and the healing power of found family." Can we just have a moment? Warm, hopeful story, found family. It's giving me very similar vibes to Legends and Lattes or The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches or The House on the Cerulean Sea. All those involve like a character who is, you know, encountering these lovely cast of characters who become their newfound family. Needless to say, this one's going to be super cute, so can't wait to pick it up. Okay, and then the final book that's coming out on October 15th, and the final book that I have to talk about for this video, is And the Sky Bled by S. Hati. I'm really excited for this one because it's actually a climate fantasy. So it deals with climate elements in this fantasy world. And essentially we are set in the chaos of this dying city that is ruled by colonizers. And we follow three different main characters. We have a thief, a slumlord, and an heiress who are all looking for this hidden cache of magic that could decide the city's fate. It also seems like the three characters have encountered each other previously in some sort of disaster. So they'll actually be meeting again, which should make for a really interesting dynamic. Overall, really hyped for this one just because of the whole climate fantasy element, and I cannot wait to see how the author tackled it. Alrighty, with that said, those are all the books that I want to talk about for this video, all the books that I'm excited for that are coming out later this year. As I said at the beginning of this video, if there's a book that you know is coming out later this year that you think I would love, let me know down below in the comments, and let me know if there's a book that you're just particularly excited for that's coming out later this year or even next year. I'll definitely do another one of these videos at the beginning of next year or end of this year for 2025 releases, but I'm really excited that I have this list of books to add to my TBR. With that said, as always, thank you so much to my Bindery members for supporting me and my channel and making all this possible, and for making it possible to publish Dust Settles North in summer of 2025. And if you're one of those people who would love to support me but can't do it in a monetary sense, you can actually join Bindery as a free follower, and you'll get your own set of perks, including a monthly newsletter where I update you on a lot of aspects of my life and also my content and reading and things like that. And as always, thank you so much for watching this video. I will see you in my next video, and please remember that this story ain't over. Bye.